Okay, guys, we're a go.
It looks like we are live. Oh my gosh, welcome back for more punishment.
K-Heads 2 was number 1 today. Lily Blade, number 2 position, and then Jen and the Birds. Good to see you guys.
Awesome sauce. It's going to be fun. So we have some situations going on today, and it's definitely not good.
Let me know if you guys can see me, because it says waiting. Okay, there we go. Boy, that's a lag. That was quite a lag.
Oh my gosh. So I don't know if everyone heard that part where I said, welcome back for more punishment. I just want to make sure you know what you're doing here.
Yeah, the technology just seems to be getting worse.
Yeah.
It really is not getting better. It's getting worse. There's Scott. Good to see you.
Yes, it's great to see you, Scott. Good to see you. There's our KK. Hello. Big hugs. Sir Dan Fulgrim, good to see you. Miss Christine Love, give that puppy a hug for us.
Absolutely. Puppy hugs? That's just great. What can you say about puppy hugs?
There's Vildon.
Vildon, hello, ancient souls. Yes, it is sometimes very hard, I think, for the ancient souls here to withstand the energy and frequency of the system that we find ourselves in.
It can get quite yucky, but we're here to do what we're doing. So, it's like the no whining lamp is lit.
Vina Lynn, good to see you. Dan, you're over in Arizona. What part of Arizona? I'm curious. We've spent a good deal of time in Arizona. We loved it. That was another spot we thought we were probably going to permanently be, but I don't know if we're going to be permanently anywhere until it comes time to permanently go to a higher dimension.
I know. Nothing's permanent. That's the one thing we can all count on, right?
That is one of the great lessons in life. That's given in many different traditions, is everything is always changing. Always changing. Everything is energy. Everything is consciousness. And it's always going through changes, sometimes more rapidly than others.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Oh, there's Israel. Just wondering about you earlier today, Israel. Good to see you. Didn't know when you go on your adventure if you're going to be able to access the lives. Hopefully you can. Hello, Miss Jenny. Good to see you. Yes, change is permanent. I like that. Those two words kind of oddly go together, don't they?
Dan's 25 miles from the south rim of the Grand Canyon. That's a great area. We enjoy it very much.
Wow.
At 6,000 feet, that makes the weather nice and tolerable. Very, very nice. Yeah, great to see you, Israel. Aniluhu, Historic Cohen. Yes, great to see you all. Jenny Pace.
Yes, 25 miles the other way. San Francisco peaks at 12,000 and change. Sounds like you're in a very interesting area.
Yeah, I'm always happy when we make the trip out west to get to, again, certain areas. And, it's just a blessing to go through that area. You can start to feel the magic in certain areas. New Mexico has a lot of magic too. There's magic everywhere. And there's a lot of technology too. I mean, there's been so many things being released now. Videos from the military, again, officially showing things that they can't officially say what it is. That's always fun, isn't it? I think the clues are here. I mean, they've always been here. They've always been here. Did you see that? The soldiers looking around, and something just flies right by their heads so fast. Well, that's just, see right there? We've had that happen to us, numerous times. I wonder how many times it's happened to you, even if you have never even noticed.
I had a family member. They were just sitting down one day at about 3 o'clock in the morning under the desert sky, and this white orb just flew right over their head, and it wasn't even going that fast. It was just going fast enough for this person to look up and say, what is a white orb doing floating past my head? You know, it was really wild. A lot of things happen out in that desert. Desert's a crazy place, but the whole world seems to be becoming more and more animated with things that are not in our full understanding.
Yep, we have a Beyond Truth sighting. Good to see you all. 7 years homesteading off-grid. Congratulations, Dan. That is quite an achievement.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Seriously, congratulations again. Off-grid and getting out of the system is something that we're always interested in achieving. Massive sinkhole mysteriously opens up in Kentucky. A depth described as extreme. Dabu just did a video on this. We've seen these type of sinkholes open up. You know, there are some massive caves in Kentucky. Beautiful state. Tennessee too, another beautiful spot. The rolling hills and all, but what's really going on underneath the surface? Why is this really happening? Because we've got sinkholes all over the place. There's especially a lot in Iran. And we know there's a lot of water issues going on in Iran. And then mysteriously, when a lot of the U.S. military bases were taken out, all of a sudden a lack of water becomes ample water.
You know, let's scale it down for just a minute. Let's take it down to our own yards and stuff. When you walk outside and you see the ground crumbling on a much smaller scale, it crumbles away usually to some kind of a nest, you know, some type of underground goings-ons where entities are making their home or making tunnels or something like that. I've seen, you know, you look into an ant's hole and there's just all kinds of tunnels. And then sometimes what we get in our yard, we get these big holes. Usually there's a pile of dirt next to it, but there's these big crabs under there. So you just got to wonder, what is this? You know, looking at it on a larger scale. It's interesting.
Timothy Elijah, I see this post. Chris Cuomo said we're no longer the apex predator. Unfortunately, implying the phenomenon is a predator. They are selling us on security, money, money, money. Yeah, but at the same time, while I'm not afraid of an alien invasion, I do think that it's happened in the past. And if you guys have been listening to us for years, absolutely, I think there's overwhelming evidence of these very, very advanced beings that have been at war. And, the Earth has been part of that battleground. We talked about this in an earlier video. Chemical tank crisis forces massive evacuations in Garden Grove. Hazmat crews, firefighters remain on the scene in Garden Grove after a massive industrial chemical tank began venting hazardous vapors at an aerospace manufacturing facility near 12100 Western Avenue. Authorities say the 34,000-gallon tank contains methyl methacrylate, a highly flammable industrial chemical used in plastics manufacturing. Officials warned the tank remains actively in crisis, with the potential for either a major chemical spill or thermal runaway explosion. More than 40,000 residents have reportedly been evacuated. Now, there was an update that was done as well by this gentleman here.
And I did report that we had some positive intel and that the tanks were stable and we were keeping the temperature cool, and actually we thought we were reducing it a little bit. Unfortunately, I had to say thought. We made a call last night to go back offensive. We've been defensive this whole time out of life risk and our hazard of the explosion. Going back offensive, we did put people in harm's way last night with support of the chemist team, that emergency response team, and our members. We did put them back in harm's way last night with an attempt to go in and neutralize the additional tank, the 15,000-gallon tank. We want to neutralize that product to remove its explosive potential should the 7,000-gallon tank blow up. They were able to go in there and see the gauge and actually see what the internal temperature is of this tank that's having issues. Unfortunately, I do have to report that the temperature was 90 degrees. Yesterday morning, it was 77 degrees when we backed out. It's been averaging about a degree an hour increasing. So that's the bad news. Unfortunately, I have to share with you. Letting this thing just fail and blow up is unacceptable to us. Our goal is to find something and not allow that happen, not let it damage our community, not let it damage our environment. That's unacceptable. Only life safety hazard now is our firefighters and our police officers and that chemistry team going down range. I just need you to understand, we are not giving up. We are not accepting the fact that we just let this thing fail. We're going to try to find a solution.
Well, that doesn't sound too hopeful now, does it? Again, when you think about how many people are always in harm's way with potentially, damaging or deadly chemicals in these busy neighborhoods that are just loaded with people if something goes wrong. And then, of course, in a time of war, you have to wonder about sabotage. Again, this material, it's located right next to an air base, and it does have military applications.
It does, and thank you so much, dearest KK. We appreciate that. Yeah, this is something, I don't know. They're talking about, okay, well, let's make containers in case this does leak, and we can put it in containers. Well, then what? As a lot of people have stated, why put these things so close to so many people, and even why have these things anyway? I wouldn't want it out in the country either. I definitely wouldn't want it in the desert. I wouldn't want it in anywhere. But here they are, they're just putting it right smack dab in the middle of so many people. Is that some type of weird way of saying it's really important and maybe even shielding it from some type of attack so that they couldn't come in and attack, or maybe if somebody was going to bombard it, they would think twice because there's so many innocent people? Or, are there other plans for this area? Obviously, this was done. This feels very, it just feels very like they have a plan. There's something behind this for sure.
Yeah, this person had asked Claude. We have all our favorites now in the AI world. Who's your favorite? Is it Claude? Is it Chat? Is it Grok? As if they're real people, but, are they in a sense? Anyway, this is the map that was made by one AI for a fallout of the potential explosion and toxic plume. Again, this is a really busy area. It's a really busy area. It's not even that far from LA proper. You can see there's Fullerton, one of our, dear friends recently came over this way to be a neighbor, was living in Fullerton. Again, that's where Fender started with their guitar production, Fullerton.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine that, guys. It's just crazy, but it's a crazy world. I was just thinking too. Remember when the plague upon the land hit? Wasn't that when Kilauea was doing its thing? Do you remember? Remember all the eruptions and we were watching the massive earthquake storms in Hawaii? Wasn't that at the same time that the plague upon the land was hitting? Because it's doing it again. Well, this is a swarm of earthquakes. We see 40 in the last 24 hours. The biggest was a 6.0. It feels like something's brewing. It feels like there's a lot brewing. 7 days, we have 109. And for the last month, we have 539 quakes. Hawaii it's growing. It's growing. It's going to be getting bigger and bigger. There's going to be new land. And when you look at Hawaii, you see the chain of islands. So what this is representing is crustal movement over a plume. So what's a plume? Well, again, magma's coming up to the surface. At one point, the surface was over here. That's how those islands were created. And then there was a rotation. The crust is not always in the exact same relative spot all the time. It moves over time. And, good question is, how fast does it really move? How fast can it really move? Because, again, we don't necessarily trust all the science that gets revised all the time. So you're going to see, right now, like off of the southeast coast of Hawaii, is where you're seeing a lot of activity. And we were watching in the last eruptions, we were watching magma coming off and into here. So this area is going to grow and it's going to expand. And at some point in time, you will have more islands. But when you really look at it, I don't know if you could see it so well here. You really can't see it on this. You can see it on Google Earth better. But this traces all the way back to Kamchatka. So there is a reason to think that the crust can shift big time, like 90 degrees or better at some point in time. Some people are waiting for that. Some people are pretty sure that we're going to have a magnetic pole shift that's going to lead to very, very real crustal displacement, which would not be an ideal situation. It's interesting to see the mainstream and what's on mainstream now, like Drudge Report. We talked about this. It's quite obviously somebody has a mask on. They're trying to portray this Fox News guest, and it even is titled The Masked Winger. Fox News guest, rubber face. I mean, how can you deny it? And also a lot of people are still showing the videos of Biden struggling to walk on the sand and then showing how awkward some of the robots are and wondering, is that what we had for 4 years?
I know, things just seem to be getting a little worse and worse and worse as we move along. But really what's happening, I mean, it's just such a deterioration of society, the world, morals, values, family dynamics. Everything is just, things are definitely not getting better. I mean, as we go on, our health is getting worse. The Justice Department is a joke. The education system, it just makes people, and they've done tests, it literally makes people dumber. What kind of a world are we headed towards? It's a spiral. It's not a good kind of spiral either.
Yeah, Satsang of the Cosmos, welcome. And if you have been following for a long time, then good to see you again. Satsang, yes, we need to have more community. We need more of a spiritual realization on Earth, not necessarily religious, that could be controlled, but spiritual. We have to realize just how sacred everything is. That it's, again, part of a bigger thing. We are all living in the mind of God. It's part of the reality that we find ourselves in. You are a galaxy. You're a universe. You might be a multiverse. It's just wild to really go in and comprehend reality. And it depends, again, on what aspects we're looking at. Well, here we go. I'm not really putting up any hope in anything any of the politicians ever say, so we barely even really give them the time of day, so to speak. We have to watch what's happening. At the same time, we don't allow our frequency to be controlled by the politicians, the actors, whether they're in Hollywood or D.C. Trump says Iran peace deal largely negotiated. Hormuz to reopen. Final terms discussed. There's been a lot of contradictory signals. There's been all sorts of reports of, vacations being canceled, people being called back to D.C., and airspace closed. What's really going on? So, again, it's all psychological ploys. This is all just about loosh, because we also have it programmed into us that when they say peace and safety, that's when destruction comes. Again, some of these prophecies, I think they really are put into place to keep us from having peace manifest.
I know, and they've done that so often. It seems to be what they want to do. It's like putting that poison where they did around so many people. We know what the higher purpose of that is, and it's absolutely no good at all. You have the 3D level where they're saying, well, this is a good place to make all these chemicals. You have all the accesses that you need and all the technology and all the power, and it's accessible. But the higher purpose for putting poison there is horrible. It's to make sure that the people who are living around there, if they want to get rid of them, they can get rid of them a lot faster, or they can just, create a leak and make sure everybody stays sick so it can, feed the hospitals in the area. I mean, the higher purpose that is just, it's everywhere. And it's just getting worse. It's not getting worse. You can just see it for what it is now.
Yeah, so Benedicta says, has anybody heard of Dr. Peter Beater, former JFK administration economic advisor, said most of our politicians were being replaced by organic robotoids back in the 80s. No, but that looks interesting and fun. So, yeah, absolutely, because, again, a lot of people, I see it all the time now, people saying, well, this was from the 80s, so it wasn't AI. But the AI has always been here. Again, this is ancient. Everything that we're witnessing now has been ongoing for a very long time. I'd say the only difference is that, here we are at a different turn of the wheel of the yugas. So we're going to keep having more and more realizations of the reality that we find ourselves in. This says Netanyahu is in full panic mode after President T sidelined both him and the Israeli government during negotiations. Said Israel's almost entirely out of the loop. I don't think that for a second. I would seriously doubt that. And, Shadow of Ezra, I see a lot of good posts by this person. But, again, we all have our takes. And how high up is 47? How high up is Netanyahu? Which one is farther up the food chain? Are they on the same food chain? Is there any chance that they could actually be opposing each other? Again, I think there's a lot that goes on for show. There's a lot where you have to control disclosure. You got to reel people back in. Sometimes if the fish is bucking too hard, you're just going to break the line. You have to reel the line out. Let the fish go a little bit farther and let them tire themselves out, if you know what I mean.
There's a process to everything.
Yeah, I want to look that up, Benedicta, because that's interesting. I will check into that. Yeah, what YouTube channel is still up? Old cassette tapes from the 80s. Oh, wow, that's fun. China deploys over 100 naval and Coast Guard vessels around Taiwan. Well, we just had the meeting again between Xi Jinping and Trump. Now, I will tell you, there are some psychics that feel there is an agreement, not an official agreement, but like an off-the-books agreement between Putin, Xi Jinping, and 47 to kind of backstab the secret societies. And, that would be really one of the questions would be, can they go off cue? What happens if they go off cue? What happens if they tell too much and things start to get out of control? I think that's, one of the things that's out there as a perhaps semi-reasonable thought.
Yeah, I agree. It's what do we have going on out here? It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting fact there, Robbie. Do you know that Ethiopia, Iran, and Israel are all in a different year than 2026? Yeah. Because, they follow different calendars. It is very interesting to see that and just recognize how our calendar has changed so many times.
Yeah, it's interesting how that would work, because like just taking an airplane and your boarding ticket would have to have some type of coherent date on it. So I wonder how they do that. Interesting.
Dan, are you talking about the original Battlestar Galactica series or the remakes? I did know they made a remake. I never saw the remake. I saw the original. And that always resonated with me. Humans on the run because they're getting wiped out by AI, by robots. That's the reality. That is the reality. Again, the AI has taken over some reptilians and other species as well. And, Dan says the viewer discovered that humans were AI all along in the last episode. Well, isn't that what got revealed in Westworld? That one of the main characters finds out that he is AI?
Yeah, that Westworld is really, that's a zinger.
Well, and again, ultimately, if you look at it from the perspective that all is consciousness, everything is consciousness. We're talking again about, ladders, desks. They have a life force resonant signature. There's an energetic signature to even what we would call inanimate objects. If you ever yell at your car and say, "Come on, give me one more turnover. Come on, let's make it another mile." If you've ever had those type of cars that you had to, pray to and pray about to make it to work or what have you, there's a reason why that makes sense. Because again, what's it made of? It's made of all these subatomic particles that can make up physical bodies. So what's really the difference then? I mean, it seems like it would be obvious that there's a massive difference. But if we're talking that everything in this reality is just consciousness playing different roles, does that make a difference to you?
It's things at different frequency, but still it's a frequency, and it's alive. I had a washing machine, and it would act up, and then I would get angry and I would yell at it and hit it, and it would work. I did this over and over and over. I thought it was the weirdest thing. And with computers, with cars and things of that nature, it's like, okay, why is it when I really direct my stern energy here, do things sometimes work? And is it just a coincidence when it continues to happen over and over and over? But yeah, at a subatomic level, all of those particles break down to something usually, from Earth. It's just how many steps away from source is it? It could be melted down and rebuilt, and melted down and rebuilt. So it's many, many, many steps away from source. And, say a tree, or say a bird. A bird is just, one off from source. How many steps off is a washing machine? You have to rebuild it, melt it down, and, create it, and just build it differently. But it still has frequency, it still has energy, and it can still react to your energy.
And there are still what we would call elemental beings involved in all that. And they are conscious beings. Each one of them a separate unit of consciousness, but doing a particular job. Here, again, when we look at China now with their deployment around Taiwan, it comes at a time when there's an aircraft carrier in the Caribbean getting close to Cuba. Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious, a tit for tat type thing. But again, there's the script. There's the script that we have a family member that was in the news industry, and a very well-known news person. How did they get the news? They got the news at like 2 or 3 a.m. And it wasn't necessarily everything that was actually happening. It was just the way you were going to portray things that were happening. It's very much always been like Orwell's 1984. And they do recycle things time and time again. Everything gets recycled in this reality, ultimately.
It does, everything, we're here to start again. We're here to do things again. And this world is really not as it's portrayed. And usually people start to see that with their first Saturn return, and they realize, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought things were. So what are they? And in that moment, that can actually cause what a lot of people know as dark night of the soul.
Yes, pinch runners here with the pinchers, and plants have feelings too. Absolutely, they've there's been studies that show that they can react to one individual that's tormented them in the past with fear, abject fear, when that person walks into the room. It was fascinating because we have the Council of Nine are 9 chickens, which I think are actually 6 hens and 3 roosters. But it was downpouring like incredible. I had to go check on them. I got completely drenched. And I found that 4 of them were inside the coop, perfectly fine. And 5 were huddled below the coop, didn't want to come out and get wet to get back up in the coop. And it was really just interesting because I could see distinct personalities in them. They're only like, 6 weeks old now or something, 6, 7 weeks old. But my gosh, they got their distinct personalities. Is some of it just genetics, or is it also soul imprint? I really think, again, the soul imprints itself into different genetic streams to try to challenge itself to grow.
Well, they have been named the Council of Nine, so their personalities are going to be very, very, very unique.
Yes, absolutely. Japan unveils the fastest ever passenger jet, 2.5 times faster than the Concorde. This simulated flight conditions at Mach 5 times the speed of sound. This is look at this, so is this something you're going to be able to take from, maybe Tokyo to San Fran and you get there in an hour or less? Wow. This is where we're at. I was, gosh, I forget who it was being interviewed, but they were again saying that something that I believe, that if you could just make it a handful more years, you're going to be blown away by the increases in technology. It's not because they're going to be happening so rapidly, it's because they're going to actually be allowed to happen so rapidly, because the technology's been here the whole time. We had the technology back in the 50s and 60s to make the Jetsons real. They just wouldn't let us make it real. Again, they're always hiding things from us. NASA's also developing a supersonic JEG called the X-59. That's been in process for years, the X-59. But going to 3,300 miles an hour, your average jet is doing 5 or maybe 550, 3,300 miles an hour, that's pretty darn fast. But at the same time, there's been so many rumors of underground railways that operate at well beyond that speeds.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to see a lot of things come out of the woodwork now that, technology is changing, and probably a lot of things that have been there a while are going to come to the forefront. So in that sense, it's an exciting time.
We've all known, that there were things that were hidden, again, by the alphabet soups, those CDC, FDA, WHO entities and stuff. And there's so much that's been coming out, and there's so much that's been proven true, and then they'll say there's no proof. And the AI to this day will say there's no proof, but there is. There's so much proof, that it takes forever just to, whittle it down to a few little pieces of proof to talk about. There's just an abundance of proof. And the AI systems are always going to just regurgitate and tell you until someday when somebody reprograms them that it's okay to actually tell the truth, because we're no longer trying to cover up certain things. Even 45, before he became 45, was against certain things. And then again, we had things happen at warp speed. So you got people coming out that have worked for these groups that are just verifying, it was all basically a C period, O period, N period. All of it. How does this make any sense at all? If we're not looking at it from the standpoint that somebody views us as not being the pinnacle of the food chain, but being part of the food chain. Maybe an important part of the food chain that they rely on for labor and sources of energy.
Well, what do you think about all those places where they collect blood, like blood donation centers? I don't know if I really trust where all of that blood goes. And then I personally these days would not want like a blood transfusion. I just wouldn't do it. It would be my own or a family member that I know where they've been and what they're doing, because, they've had people get blood transfusions and then all of a sudden somebody has a new addiction, or they're starting to have bad dreams. They're picking up memory from that other blood donor's plasma. They've now merged, and I don't want that. Especially in this day and age with what people have been exposed to, a lot of attachments can come with different blood.
Yeah, again, having discussions with a client about dating in this time, and what one of the very first questions has to be if you're out on a date. You got to know where their head's at. You have to know, basically, are you awake or are you totally asleep, partially awake? We are aware. James was just bringing up some things out there that are in certain circles. But, you could look things up. And all the time when I go to look these things up, I find dead ends. I find dead ends that you can't really trust. It's just like anything. I mean, we had nice Mormon boys knock on the door. I've had Jehovah's Witnesses knock on the door in years past, and I've invited them in, and then they've regretted it after we sit down and have a discussion for a while. I've even had them bring back their elders, and their elders bring back their elders. Because, again, there's always these different red herrings that they're giving us. They're always giving us little truths to lead us astray, to buy themselves more time to achieve a greater level of control over us. And sometimes, it becomes really obvious what they're waiting for. Other times it's not so obvious. We've seen historically lots of events that we look at them now, 6-7 years after something, just started, and we could see clearly what was going on. And the cover-up, too. So you get just this massive amounts of people. 69-year-old George, literally 5 minutes after receiving, no longer with us. And then you have people that, I saw some comments earlier today talking about this being, and I would use the term being because I really don't think this is actually anything like us. I really don't think that's the case. Tim Burchett was on Joe Rogan, and he just came right out and said that, this entity is behind all those little guys jumping out with parachutes out of helicopters all over the place, coming out of those boxes. And they've been just making them worse with all sorts of new things. How could that foundation, the Gil Bates Foundation, how could it possibly exist? You have a sitting congressman putting the blame right there. But then we also had Thomas Massey that did so much to expose things, not win his re-election. There were people that think that was definitely not a accurate counting of what really happened. One of the most shared and deleted videos ever. What really went on with this particular Hillary clone bot? I don't know. Was it too much wine? Maybe, or was it malfunctioning silicon chip in there?
You just don't know, but that certainly went around a lot, and it really looked weird. She didn't move in any way like a normal human would move. It's like she just seized up and was all stiff, and I think she lost a shoe. And I mean, how can you have that much money, be in charge of that much information and decisions, and actually have a malfunction like that and have everything be okay? I mean, everything just keeps pointing to that those beings that are running this matrix, they're not human. You don't get a human who despises other humans and wants them to get sick and harm the children. I mean, just look at it. Just look at any other species. The children are protected for the most part with most species. But with humans, it seems like our children are their prey. And if we're not protecting them, there's really bad things can happen, and it's just not right. It's not right the way our children have been treated. And then, even if you are a protective parent, there's infiltration through the technology where your child could be, they're impressionable. They're very impressionable, and they could get impressions that could change them for the rest of their life, and it's not safe.
So, yeah, to me it looks like, and Cindy said the same thing I was thinking about Thomas Massey, was like, watch, he's going to run 2028, and that could very well be, it very well could be, you see all these orbs, by the way, and all sorts of things. We know going way back, there was videos 20, 30 years ago of orbs making, whatchamacallit, those circles in the fields, crop circles, so I mean that's been ongoing a long time. There's a lot of AI slop, and then there's stuff that it's hard to make out if it is or isn't AI, but I wouldn't be surprised if anything out there in the ocean. The ocean is so vast, and where's the end of the ocean? Where really is the end? I don't know. I don't think we know the whole map. I think there's so much we don't know. We do recognize that, if you've missed it, by the way, people have been testing the amount of weight in packages, and it seems that Walmart and some of these other places are, maybe it's the manufacturers themselves, if you're talking this type of packaged items, that just doesn't add up. There's shrinkflation, remember 16 ounces and 12 and then 11.5, and then it just keeps going down. Company profits keep going up, and then there's so much food, unfortunately, probably most of it, that really isn't safe to eat.
No, it's not. I think so many people, if you're on a budget, you might as well bring that scale to the store. It's not fair. They're just really, getting people for every little thing that they can, and it's so not right. Food is expensive enough, and it's so unaffordable as it is, and now we're even getting less for our money, and we don't even know it. I think a scale is a really, really, really good idea. I think if enough people were taking a scale to the store with them and calling the stores out on it, things would definitely change. Things would have to change. And I guess this is the type of behavior, type A behavior that we might need to do to get things to change. Of course, I still see people all the time making comments about putting on sunscreen, and I will still be like, you do understand that there's chemicals in sunscreen that are not good for you. And if you put it on your skin, it's being absorbed into the body. So we have to be very careful with anything that we put on our skin, because it can't be absorbed into the body. Be very, very careful of your shampoos and your conditioners too, because there's lots of stuff like parabens and stuff that you really don't want to be exposing yourself to. Well, yeah, you put that on your skin and it sinks in your body, and your body has to deal with it. So usually a good rule of thumb, if you cannot eat it, you don't want it on your skin, and even in your hair, you want things that are edible going in your hair. And they found most of the popular hair shampoos have hair loss properties. People are losing their hair every time they wash with the shampoo that says, oh, we're going to make your hair thicker and better and stronger. Well, they wash and their hair is just falling out. Go figure.
Yeah, there was a time when I used to wash my hair like every day, condition it every day. There was a time when I used to put sunscreen on. Now we never use sunscreen. And you know what I noticed? I don't get burned. When that changed was when my diet changed. When I went to eating as organic as possible and being very, very careful with every single food that I eat, then there seemed to be a correlation between getting sunburn, because I don't seem to get sunburn. And the other thing I don't really wear is sunglasses. The only time I'll ever wear anything like that is when I'm mowing the lawn and there's stuff getting kicked up, or if I'm, working on a power saw that's kicking up things. Wear safety glasses. But here they're talking about sunglasses. They told you to wear sunglasses. Now skin cancer rates are skyrocketing. The moment sunglasses were introduced, skin cancer rates exploded. Why? Because they block the exact full spectrum sunlight rays your eyes are designed to receive. These rays hit your pineal gland. They trigger the hormone that produces melanin, your skin's natural sun protection. No light to the eyes means your brain thinks it's nighttime. Melanin production slows down. Suddenly, even normal sunlight becomes dangerous. Every cell in your body communicates and regenerates through sunlight. Block it and you're sabotaging yourself, your own protection from the inside out. Natural sunlight's not the enemy. Blocking it with sunglasses might be killing us. Then toxic sunscreens are definitely adding to the problem. It's interesting because when you look at it, when did all these cancers develop? It's again with the introduction of GMO foods. It's with these habits like sunscreen and sunglasses, as well as, the increase in things like glyphosate. So Valerie does a good job in the stuff that she is covering here. Vitamin D deficiency. Melanoma is not caused by sunlight. Again, carcinogenic ingredients. When you think about this, it's just so amazingly devious, isn't it?
And it's constant, too. They get you coming and going.
It's so devious. And this person, they found P.F. Iser, A-N-D, saying in reverse, inside her chromosome. 31-year-old woman developed stage 4 bladder cancer after literally found it in her chromosome. Yeah, it mutated. There's mutations. We're all being hit with this stuff in different ways. If they won't get us to go along with the mass way, then, hey, there's mosquitoes, there's ticks, there's things like that. Yep, we get it. They're still moving forward. The only way this makes sense is if you have a group of people that appear to be human, and many of them are, that are actually carrying out the orders of beings that are not human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah, Ray's talking about radiation in the food and all. It's just never ending. So, Tracy in New Zealand, sinus infection, sending positive vibes. Yeah, vitamin D. Absolutely. It's so important. I think also, the one thing I was noticing, because I've been back to doing something I was doing all the time that I got away from, which was intermittent fasting. I was waiting until afternoon to eat and then having 1 or 1.5 meals. And I've noticed the difference because my energy went way, way up. And I was feeling overloaded really for a while. So again, I think our number one line of defense is really fasting, intermittent fasting. And then here you go, laughing uncontrollably.
Bill Gates consistently, he keeps going on podcasts warning there will be another pandemic.
And he laughs uncontrollably like, a total sociopath. A total sociopath. Well, maybe he actually is. Hello.
He definitely seems to enjoy himself right now. And I don't know. I don't understand in a world where everything is so chaotic and people are so sick and they're just getting sicker. Why is he allowed to just walk free the way he is? And, I've heard blurbs here and there. Oh, so-and-so is going to have to go to trial, be indicted. It's like, whatever. That gets thrown around so often, but I've never seen anyone of this status who brings so much harm to people. I've never seen them get any type of anything, not even a slap on the wrist, nothing. They just continue on. They continue on and on and on. Where's the justice? I hear, I guess it's almost triggering now when people say, oh, don't worry, the white hats are in charge. Really? Why is this allowed to happen? It just frustrates me. I think we're the ones in charge, and we're the ones who can't wait for someone else to do something. Like I said, bring a scale to the store. It has to start somewhere. We need to make a move.
Well, when you get that trust the plan, what does that do? It gets you to say, don't worry, somebody else has it. I could just sit back and not do anything. That's exactly what they're counting on. Or if you believe everything is the will of God and there's nothing you can do to change it, then what do? You do nothing. You sit back and don't do a damn thing. That's what they want.
Indeed.
It's obvious. This is what they've been doing from many different angles. This is Louisiana's John Kennedy. I'll play a little bit of his. I mean, this is bad, but, there's worse we've seen. But the fact is, again, the corruption is so deep, I don't see how you could salvage anything.
Now, once again, Medicaid is supposed to be for sick people. When you're spending other people's money, it's real easy to expand beyond that. The Medicaid program in California will pay for scooters. I get that. Sometimes that might be necessary. Bicycles, but it'll also pay for music lessons. The Medicaid program in California will also pay for art lessons.
Or maybe for, again, houses coming from people from other countries. Again, 1.2 trillion over 10 years just on this one little project again. And you got people that are being denied, like with myself and the situation I had last year. No coverage, asked for like hardship coverage from a local place that wanted to charge me and did charge me for an ambulance ride more than the state of California will allow to legally be charged. And it's here you go, we're in a red state, but still the corruption is everywhere. It's like when you're in a corrupted system that doesn't know even where to begin with fairness, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? Certain procedures that might cost, $50 out of pocket, suddenly, if you have insurance, they can charge $2,000. It's a racket. It's just a racket.
Yeah, and meanwhile, AI content is swamping the internet. What's the purpose with this? There's a never-ending flood of content generated by artificial intelligence. It's totally reshaping the internet. And I do find it to be effective. And this is talking about the sheer volume of AI material that's coming out. And we've mentioned, why does it seem like the AI system promotes AI material? That would make sense, right? If the AI itself literally has its own interest in mind, maybe it wants to promote AI-generated content over human. Maybe what they're doing right now is laying the groundwork so that if you are a human YouTuber, you're going to be relegated to get just a tiny percentage of the audience that if you were an AI program, you could actually get, that they would actually allow. One of our regulars sent me this. What they found under the DuPont estate in 1915. 230,000 views 2 days ago, right? This is an AI channel, the oldest material. What is like, it's not even, it's 1 month old. This channel is 1 month old, and they've had a 58,000 view video. They've had some that didn't do so well, which you would expect in reality when you're starting out brand new. And then this one had 230,000 views. How does this happen? These are interesting videos for the most part, although I have researched some of them and found that they're quoting stuff that you can't find. In some cases, there's no evidence for some of the things that they're quoting at all. Yet they do hook you in. They do kind of get you. And a lot of these are around the conspiracy-centered, thought lines. So a lot of them appeal to people like all of us, right? And so you wonder, what did they find at a DuPont estate? Well, really, again, how could they get on like their third video or whatever? 230,000 views. Is the algorithm trying to make sure that AI is the most successful thing out there?
I mean, it certainly seems suspicious when so many channels are just getting squeezed out to their core, and then it's so easy for these other channels to go up and get hundreds and thousands of views. And none of the information has to be correct, and it's so easy to do. I watched a video, some kid, maybe 25 years old, took a very good video that a human made, took the transcript and plugged it into an AI and let the AI do the video, but the AI just switches it up a little bit, which means things don't have to be correct at all. So how do you tell, a lot of these AI videos? Well, you can tell this one by, you have to investigate it a little bit. You have to go in and see when it was made, and things of that nature. But you can tell, like this one, just the AI voice kind of gives it away, and then
it's the same AI agents.
It's the same AI agent.
This is the thing. We get used to a handful. We got, the friendly sounding English guy. We got the brilliant sounding, Asian guy. And you just feel like, I know this guy because I heard this guy on other channels. But the reality is this channel just started April 14th. It's all AI generated. I've seen a bunch of these grouped together where there'll be like 3 or 4 channels that are doing a video in collaboration. But they're, again, the same people. They're just branching out and they're plugging this material. What I worry about is at some point in time, they will just eliminate the us of the world. They will just eliminate the BP Earth Watches of the world, the Dave Devine, DAP 2030s, the R. Wayne Steigers. At some point, because we're literally human, we will just be blacklisted. And all you will have will be these AI channels with those familiar voices that you're used to hearing.
Well, because that's what they're pushing, and that's what they're promising, and they're making it so hard to even make a living, putting out this kind of information that we do. It's very, the world is definitely not tipped in the favor of humans at all. And you really have to be careful with AI. Sometimes just when you're doing a project and you need the math done, and a decimal point can really make a big difference just where that decimal point is placed. And don't think for a second that AI is going to get it right. You have to know what you're doing if you're going to use AI, and know what you're doing. Maybe use it for a backup, but I highly recommend not using it for, just winging it. Yeah.
And you got to look at it because some of them are real, and they're people that are doing exactly what we're doing, and doing a good job. And then there's other ones that are brand new, and the names will be so close together, so it's tough. This is definitely, though, we could see it. AI is taking over. It's taking over. And, I think that the ultimate goal is pushing humans out, so you never really get to see what another human's really thinking and talking about.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
We're at that critical time right now where we have choices to make. And wow, I'm looking outside and it's just like a swarm of tiny gnats out there. It looks like an ocean of gnats right now. Pentagon released UFO footage showing a biological UFO with detachable appendage, identical to the one filmed over China in 2024. People are, again, they are coming up and saying, wait a minute, now this looks like what we saw over there. There's a lot of people delving deep and, doing a great job to say, well, this was Sequoia National Park in 2015, and what's this one? This one's many years later. It looks kind of similar. I mean, it looks like some crazy guy in a spacesuit breakdancing. Is this Project Bluebeam going on? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty weird looking there.
It is. It is very odd. There's so much coming out. And then how about Tartaria? I mean, Tartaria is one of the biggest, news items on the net. And people are realizing that we had high technology, we had free energy. We could see, why did they build more beautiful things that were so much more artistic than what we build now? Yeah, were they really tapping into the ether? And when did we really succumb as a society, as a whole, to this dark matrix? That's really a good question, because I don't know if we have the exact answer.
No, I mean, it really seems like it was phased out and a new type of world was phased in. But they phased everything out through changing the history and, putting so many people in insane asylums and just making sure that they had 100% control over how children were raised and what they were taught. I'm sure they're doing a reset probably is very, very involved and very cruel, and you need beings of a certain caliber that really don't care about suffering to handle a reset.
Yeah, Lily Blade saying tech is a trap, clairvoyance. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everything that they offer us, we already have naturally. And we don't really need it because as we evolve and grow, we're going to grow into abilities that we had that have been kind of shut down. Lots of signs in the sky. This is Round Rock, Texas. This is Mr. MBB. Really unusual colors. Supposedly that is not enhanced or changed at all. That is very pretty. It's kind of like a magenta peach. Very curious.
Yeah, what do you do when you go outside and you see your world has changed to this other color? But I did get that years ago, where looking at the sky through my third eye, it was going to become more of a magenta color.
More along these lines.
More along those lines, but much cleaner. This is very hazy. And what I got is it's a much crisper, more beautiful, kind of luminescent type of magenta.
So I was looking at this and I thought, is this real? Let me look into it. And it turns out that this is a fascinating one. About 815 AD, long time ago, 1200 years, 1211, a strange episode shook the city of Lyon in France. 3 men and a woman were captured by the population after witnesses claimed they had disembarked from a mysterious aircraft spotted over the area. Whoa, 815 AD? They came out of the sky in a ship? 3 men and a woman. This is wild. The episode generated panic and intense commotion at the time. Many believed the 4 belonged to the legendary Sky Pirates of Magonia. I will be doing research on that. Accused of provoking storms and plundering crops through unknown means. The case was recorded by Bishop Agobardo of Lyon in his work De Grandine et Tonitrius about hail and thunder, written in the 9th century. In his report, the 4 individuals remained chained for several days and were exhibited before an angry crowd, who demanded his execution for stoning. They, however, insisted that they were ordinary people from the region themselves, and they claimed they had been taken by mysterious men to an unknown place where they witnessed things they had never seen before. The crowd did not believe their stories and accused them of being the Sky Pirates themselves from the heavenly ships. Gobardo has rejected the accusation, stating that everything was just an observed belief fueled by ignorance and fear of the time. Oh, I've even seen people say, well, they they didn't realize that the mushrooms they put in the stew were that type of mushrooms. And they're just having a psychedelic experience. But were they? In front of the angry crowd, he debated at length with the accusers and managed to prevent the 4 prisoners from being executed, ordering their release. More than 1,000 years later, the case regained prominence when it was recaptured by Jacques Vallée in 1969 in Passport to Magonia. Jacques Vallée was one of the most eye-opening people for me. From folklore to flying saucers, where he compared medieval accounts with modern UFO descriptions. Yeah, I was reading his material back in the 70s and 80s, and it was very, very fascinating. So were these people snatched and then sent back down by ETs? You know, it turns out this was a real event of some sort. Anyway, whatever it was, it appears to be legitimate. But what was the outcome? I don't know. Magic mushroom soup, or was this some sort of abduction? Literally.
You know, I have a feeling those beings that are standing there on the stage, it's hard for me to say that they actually let themselves get caught. I think they were more curious and they wanted to look at the humans closer and see how they acted and reacted. So that's just what I'm picking up. Could be wrong, but that's what I'm picking up. Like, they wanted a closer look to see how humans behave, you know, in their raw form, making themselves, you know, like, just not dangerous, you know, making themselves vulnerable. I think in an instant, if one of those beings that was on the stage were in danger, they would be able to disappear. I really do. So I think for them, it was almost like a field trip, you know, like kids go on a field trip to go experiment and find new things.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That is really pretty wild. Yes, you know, again, you think about that, and, you know, this is back in a time when you could be executed for talking about things that were taken to be going against the Bible. You know, when you look at this, you know, this is something we've talked about numerous times. And in fact, there is a relief in the UN that's kind of similar to this. It just doesn't show these outer lands, but it shows the Earth from this point of view. And you wonder things about flight paths. Why are the flight paths the way they are? Why are we not allowed to go, you know, over Antarctica? How big is Antarctica? Where does it really start? Where does it really end? Could it be that these ice walls are just technology? And, you know, literally, when you look again at Antarctica and the fact that, you know, you have these maps that show it without ice, that are probably copied from older maps, but it's reasonable to assert that Antarctica and Greenland, neither of them were ice covered, maybe 500 to 1,000 years ago, maybe only 300 years ago. There's evidence to point in that direction. So that gets you to wonder how much of our weather is really being manipulated by these ultra-terrestrials. Is it almost all entirely just simply, you know, AC and heat? Is it really just all technology?
You know, I think to a very high degree, it's an experiment, but I think our saving grace, what we have going for us, is karma. Like, karmically, certain things cannot happen to us, but certain things can. You know, you're responsible for those beings that are under your so-called control. You know, it's just such a really strange world we live in, and there's really no certainties other than, change. Change is the one certainty.
So Pinch Runner was saying you can't, I've seen these things before. You can't, let's see, you can't fly from Brazil directly to South Africa. So let's just say flight from Rio to Johannesburg. And, you know, you have to either route up to somewhere to the north. 2 stops, Sao Paulo, Cape Town. I don't know. I started to do this and to do research into what ones you could and couldn't do. I just got distracted with other things. I do think this is a big clue, though, to really what areas are off limits. I think it doesn't make any sense when you look at the known land masses. It's like 75-80% of all the land mass is above the equator. So, there's been people that theorize that's just totally illogical. There's a lot of things that are illogical. What was meant here with Genesis 6:3, my spirit will not contend with humans forever. They're immortal. Their days will be 120 years. A genetic limitation. How was that done? Did they shorten the telomeres? Did they accelerate certain things? Did they change the environment? We know oxygen levels on the planet in the distant past were way higher. With greater oxygen, we would have bigger things, bigger life forms. So, are they literally manipulating the carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen levels in order to maintain us in a certain lifespan and health?
Yeah, I think whatever they did genetically, I think it can be undone, with everything that we do, it can be undone. But how, are we going to see? I know there are a lot of age reversing technologies out there. And, we really love the LifeWave patch, and we partner with them. And it's definitely made a change in our lives and our daily lives. And I've seen it work with animals too. It worked great with CETA. So it works across the board. So some people say, well, it's just, it's a placebo. No, because chickens don't know what a placebo is. Neither do horses, and neither does CETA. And it worked very clearly. And it is like an age reversal type of technology, using your own light, putting that back into your body. So things are coming up. I think things are out there, but I don't know if we're going to see it in this lifetime. It would be great if they came out with something really cool tomorrow. And as long as you want to stay here, you can stay here if you want to, and enjoy life, because when you get older, it just doesn't seem like you're older. Like, I still have the same soul in me that I had when I was 16. I know who I am. I'm just, my vessel has aged, and I've gained a lot of experience. And with that experience and all those screw ups, I've gained a lot of wisdom, only because I've screwed up more than most people. But yeah, it's a very difficult position to be put in.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at this map, it's interesting too, because the Ramayana does have a part in it. And the Ramayana, I think, is very ancient. And it does have a part where they talk about looking back at the earth from space and seeing it as, again, being round. But also in the Hindu tradition, we also have the realization that there's inner earth civilizations. They do talk about that. And they do talk about over 100,000 humanoid species in our galaxy alone. So, there are realms out there that have life on them. There's also a lot of parts of the earth that have life that, don't always interact with us in this age. And where we are is kind of like an indentation. Think of the Death Star, that little indentation area. Well, where we are, it's like kind of a concave portion of something that is round. Look at the lens of an eye. That gives you a good representation too. Where we are right now is kind of like right there on the retina, but the rest of the earth is there below us. So I think that's how flat earth and round earth can be reconciled, because the earth is just way bigger than we're told, and we're only on a small portion of it.
Itty bitty portion.
Then when we look at the Sumerian culture and the records and the Anunnaki, again, multiple times the Anunnaki, certain Anunnaki, complain about there being just too many humans. From their point of view, they created humans to be the slaves because the Ijiji rebelled and it caused tension. In order to keep everybody happy, they made a new class of worker bee from some of the genetic material that was already here and some of their own. And they just basically left enough of the genes on to be intelligent enough to do the work they need. But without too much intelligence, again, the junk DNA, that's a clue. That's basically a lot of stuff that's been turned off that would have been turned on if they didn't interfere. When you look to, again, all the reports of abductions and genetic experimentation, it gives you a clue that we're talking about the same thing that's going on governmental levels right now. It's again, these same entities behind the scenes that are manipulating things. They've just gone and they've hidden in the woodwork because humans are more productive when they actually think something's their idea.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, the wiping out and restarting human society is there in the Sumerian texts. It's right there to read. Unfortunately, we also have, this is Dr. John Coleman's Council of 300. We have this book too, which is 50 years old, I think now, something like that. And it talked about the goal was to reduce the population by 2050 in half. Basically figuring we would have 8 to 9 billion people on the planet by 2050. Their goal was to cut that population in half and at least 4 billion useless eaters to be eliminated because it was too much to manage, just simply, again, by the top of the food chain, so to speak. And what we're watching now is just, again, it's part of that original plan being very exposed, because it's been exposed time and time again. The Georgia Guidestones, 500 million, we knew that was blew up. It was interesting too, because in this book, Dr. Coleman, he thinks that most of the population that would survive would literally be of Asian descent, is what he was getting. Again, it's an older book, it's somebody's opinion, but we've seen a lot of things actually kind of make sense when you look at it. And then we think about the royals, again, the blue bloods. So much has come out in the E-files. So much has come out in the E-files. And, again, now there's more things that Andrew, who's no longer a prince, is he? I think he had everything taken from him, right? Well, I don't know. They are looking at investigating. But the thought is that they do these occult rituals where they can move the consciousness from one avatar to another. That is an interesting concept. Now, this says for the elite, the physical body is just a temporary vessel. That's everybody. That's the normal way. This is never meant to be a permanent vessel. It's temporary. So we have one experience, as Jane Doe, whatever, born in 1953, going to die in 2019, et cetera, and that soul can go on and have a totally different experience, somewhere else. That's the normal way of things. But we're with the Lites, what they're trying to do is they're going the route of technology, and they want to maintain the continual consciousness without going through the amnesia of the soul. And they also, have chosen the AI to give them longevity, which when you look back to those Sumerian legends, was there ever a person that was granted immortality by the gods? Utnapishtim, which is the biblical version of Noah, was transformed, again, by the Anunnaki and granted immortality. Literally became an Ijiji. And literally we got that there are these entities that would creep you out if you saw them. If you saw them, they would creep you out because, they look kind of humanoid, but they're very, very vampirish. They're very, very, oh gosh, it's like the Emperor from Star Wars, which, again, happens to look a lot like George Soros.
Well, it goes back to frequency again. Mostly you would feel bad feelings, disruptive feelings because of their frequency. The energy that holds their form together is definitely not a pleasant one, whereas there's other frequencies that are so high in a way it can bring you into a state of healing, and sometimes when the body heals it hurts. So being around different beings, guides and angels in the 3D, their frequency matters. Just like a tuning fork, you strike a tuning fork at a certain tune, it can have an effect on your body. So imagine being in the presence of a frequency that's either very high or very low. You could have disturbances or you can have euphoria.
So Utnapishtim, or Uttanapishtim, is basically, again, is the reason for the biblical Noah story. Him and his wife were granted immortality by the gods Enlil and Ea. Ea is also Enki, as a reward for obeying divine instructions to build that massive boat that saved creatures from the great flood. After the waters receded and Utnapishtim offered sacrifices, Enlil blessed them, deifying the couple and transporting them to live in the land of Dilmun, or the far away at the mouth of the rivers, where they became the only humans to escape death. Ooh, isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, everything that you really, it's all right there if we just start looking a little bit closer. You know how things work, Mom gets up, the pups follow. Well, in this house, it doesn't work quite that way. It seems like Rama usually follows me, Sita follows Sin. But, again, it depends on who's got the food, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, usually the feed lady, she gets the most attention and the most followers to the bathroom. But Dobermans, Dobermans forget any kind of, personal space. That is not what they were bred for. They are bred to be your Velcro companion, your shadow, your confidant, your best friend, your everything. Those Dobies are special. And what really breaks my heart so much is you see a lot of them get thrown into like a, one of those dog jails. And that's got to be so disturbing for any dog.
Oh, absolutely. No, we love them. Again, dog spelled backwards is what? You know. So you that made it to the end of this live, we want to thank you guys. And I want to ask you guys that are still here, what do you enjoy the most that we talk about? We try to cover everything, because there are those that want to know what's happening in the world with a spiritual twist. But what did you enjoy the most about today's presentation? If you leave a little comment, let me know what you find the most interesting, the thing that gets you going, the thing that you would like more of. I'd love to know. And Cindy's going to give us some dings.
Indeed. A special thanks to KK and everyone else for your support. And here we go. Y'all are amazing. Source bless and namaste.
Much love and gratitude, guys. We'll come back here and try to do it again tomorrow. As always, we couldn't do it without your support. Loka samasta sukhi no bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my own thoughts, words, actions, and deeds contribute to the happiness and freedom for all. That is our wish.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And do not forget to check out LifeWave and PromoLife. They're two things that have been very, very helpful for us, and the links are in the description.